Hey, I'm Hunt, and this is Hunt on LSU, your channel for LSU Fighting Tiger football talk. Enjoy the video. We want you to leave a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe right below the video. Enjoy. For the next 6 hours, I'm on the air. So 2 hours today, 2 hours Thursday, 2 hours on Friday, and then probably another 90 minutes on Saturday. I'm going to talk about just about every aspect of this game. I'm going to talk about LSU's offensive line without Garrett Dellinger and with Paul Mubanga working against this Alabama defensive front. I'm going to talk about LSU's wide receivers going to work on an Alabama secondary that's had some issues this year. I'm going to talk about Alabama's freakish wide receivers, specifically young Ryan Williams, and how LSU handles that. And we'll talk about Jalen Milroe and his ability to run the ball. And we'll do all of that stuff over the course of the next 6 hours that I'm on the air. But I continue to think, as I've thought all week, about this game, and it continues to be very clear to me that it is one specific player on the LSU roster that's going to have to be at his best on Saturday. Everybody's got to play well. One guy's got to be at his best, and that's Garrett Nussmeier. And it seems obvious. Yes, it seems very, very obvious. Obviously, the quarterback's got to play well for LSU to score a victory over a top 15 team. But we understand what the identity of this LSU team is. And I would love it if they ran the ball pretty well on Saturday. A lot of teams have on Alabama. Tennessee ran it well on them. Vanderbilt ran it well on them. Those two teams were able to win the game. Sorry, they didn't play Tennessee yet. Vanderbilt ran it on them. They won that game. Georgia ran it pretty well on them as well. Tennessee did play. I completely blanked there. And Alabama's lost those two games where teams have run the ball, and I hope LSU does that. And certainly LSU's going to have to do a better job against the mobile quarterback. But you kind of are, at this point, who you are. So I don't expect LSU to run for 220 on Alabama on Saturday, and I don't expect LSU to hold Jalen Milroe to 10 yards rushing on Saturday. You just got to be pretty good there. You got to be better than you have been in your defeats. But what ultimately LSU is a team that's backbone is the passing game. It's a team that is strength is in the passing game. It's that protection, it's those wide receivers, it's that tight end, and it's the quarterback. And I don't want LSU to throw the ball 50 times on Saturday. But the 35 to 38 to 40 times that LSU does throw it needs to be the reason why LSU wins the game. LSU's going to get into some third and downs because that's what they do. They have some inefficiencies on first and second down, and they rely on their passing game to convert third downs. They're going to have to do that again on Saturday. When they get into the red zone, yeah, you've got to run it a little bit, but LSU, more so than most teams in the Southeastern Conference, has relied on throwing it to get into the end zone, and you're going to have to make some of those throws. I think about the A&M game 2 weeks ago and that first touchdown pass that Nussmeier laid right in the bucket to Mason Taylor in the corner of the end zone. You got to make those throws. I think about the slant route that you got in the hands of one of your most electrifying playmakers in Aaron Anderson, and he takes it the distance. You got to do some of that, and that starts with Garrett Nussmeier. And then you get to the other side of things, which is the catastrophic mistakes, and you simply cannot have them. You found a way to overcome it against South Carolina. You found a way to overcome it against Ole Miss. It's not impossible. It's just a lot more difficult. And so I talked to Garrett Nussmeier last night, as did the TV media, the rest of the print media, and he spoke about how much better he's got to play. He talked about beating himself up a little bit last week after the 3-interception performance against Texas A&M. And he knows that it's got to be better. LSU does not have a path to beating Alabama behind 39 carries for 225 yards and holding Alabama to 7 points. Like, that's just not going to happen. The only way LSU can do it is if Nussmeier's at his best. Now, you can potentially run it enough like they did against Arkansas and play defense well enough like they did against Arkansas to where Nussmeier doesn't have to throw for 360 and 5 scores. But he's going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting on third downs, and he can't turn the ball over. That's just the way it's got to be. And if LSU gets in a position where they've got to throw it 50 times and they're always in 3rd and 10 and they get behind and Alabama knows they can come in, rush the passer, and bring exotic blitz packages and try to get home to Garrett Nussmeier, that's when bad things happen. I'm not breaking any news here today, but I felt like if I'm going to start previewing this game in earnest, I've got to do it at square one. And this is square one for LSU. The good news in all of this is that square one for LSU has every ability to be awesome on Saturday and beat Alabama. Garrett Nussmeier is as good as any quarterback in the Southeastern Conference. You can toss Jackson Dart into that discussion for sure. Some might want to toss Jalen Milroe in that discussion. Carson Beck, talent-wise, gets tossed in there as well. Taylon Green has been uber productive. Nico Iamaleava's played better over the last 3 weeks. But there's nobody in this league that you would take, in my opinion, and suggest, yeah, definitely a lot better than Garrett Nussmeier. And LSU hasn't always been in that position. There are times where you've gone into games, big ones, and felt like you needed to protect your quarterback, not necessarily from an offensive line perspective, although that's very important, but like shield him from the big moments in the game. You got to run the ball. You got to play defense. You got to win the turnover battle. Whatever the quarterback gives you, that's a little bit gravy. That's not that far in the rearview mirror for LSU. That's not the case anymore. We know that. But he's got to be really, really good on Saturday. And it's even to a point, and I heard Matt talking about this with Texas A&M game previous to that. He said, just show me what A&M's stat line is from a rushing perspective. I'll tell you who wins the game. And obviously Texas A&M ran it for over 240 yards, and they ran it for 5 touchdowns, and it is what it is. But if in that vein, if you give me Garrett Nussmeier's stat line for Saturday right now, I feel like I got a pretty good chance to tell you who wins the game. And that's not always been the case, breaking down big games for LSU. But LSU has to start with him. I think he knows that. I think he's prepared for that. I don't gather a ton from him from an interview perspective. We're not even playing any sound from him in this segment because he's, quite frankly, boring, and that's fine. You don't have to be an amazing quote. Drew Brees is an amazing quote either. He gave you every cliche in the book every single week. Did it for 20 years. Garrett Nussmeier is very much like that. Did it before the Ole Miss game. Did it before the A&M game. He did it again last night. He gave us, it's just another game. I realize I've got to play a little bit better. All glory to God. That kind of stuff. That was basically his 8 minutes with the print media yesterday. And it's not worthwhile to play a bunch of that because you're not going to gather anything from it. But that's the way he approaches these games. And it comes from his background. It comes from being a coach's kid. And I think he honestly lives that out when he goes out on the field. For the first time all year, in the second half, 2 weeks ago, he buckled a little bit. He made some mistakes. He missed some open receivers. He missed some reads. He turned the ball over 3 times. But it wasn't necessarily the turnovers that were as alarming to me as were the errant open throws. We haven't seen a lot of that, and that suggested to me like maybe things were speeding up on him a little bit and he was uncomfortable. And we'll see how much of that had to do with Texas A&M's pass rush, which is better than Bama's. We'll see how much of that had to do with Texas A&M's crowd, which won't be there on Saturday. It'll be a crowd behind him. And we'll see how much of that was because of an adjustment that Texas A&M made that Alabama can mimic. I don't know the answer to that quite yet, and only Garrett does. But we'll find out on Saturday. And when we do, I think you'll get a good feeling whether or not LSU's got a good chance to win the game because it's going to start with 13 and white. We got, again, 6 hours of my show to get to preview this game. We're going to talk to Tony Tsoukalas in 50 minutes to talk about the Alabama perspective. In 5 minutes, J.D. Pickell is going to come on and give his thoughts on this game from a national perspective. There will be all kinds of time to talk about this, but I thought it was appropriate today as we really get to the back half of the week and start to get into this game matchup for matchup, and I'm going to write a matchups piece right after my show's over for LouisianaSports.net, and I promise you this will be part of it. It starts on Saturday with the quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier. If he completes 69% of his throws for 297, 3 touchdowns and no picks, LSU's going to win the game. If he turns it over twice and misses a couple of open receivers and completes 50% of his throws, LSU's in big trouble. in my opinion, early in the week right now, I feel like he's got a good chance to play great in the game because it's at home, because they've had a week to prepare, because he's got a lot of weapons, and because I think he's a really good player. But that doesn't guarantee anything. It's just the way I feel about this game.
Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.